this small place of 40 kilometers called the Gaza Strip, at the moment is not in a place of even starting to speak about future political solution because they were under terror regime. So we need to make sure that the Gaza people, the Gaza Strip will be under future horizons that are not existing under Hamas.
I think most people listening to this conversation will conclude that there is no prospect of Israel even looking at self-determination for the Palestinian people now.
I think this is not my duty.
This is the third time we've spoken since October the 7th. And I wonder how you feel about what happened and what you want to happen now has changed at all in that time.
I think when October 7th happened, we as Israelis, we didn't realize the scale of atrocities. And a month after, we understand that this is something that will change Israel forever. This is not another terror attack. This is not another chapter in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the fight of a democratic country versus barbarism. This is a fight of Western civilization against jihadi ideology that wanted to commit a genocide in the Jewish people in Israel. So I think people today realize that our life will never look the same.
So it's even more, in a way, than you felt initially. I mean, the reason I ask is because, the word that sort of became used very quickly was revenge. That was a word that was used by Benjamin Netanyahu. I wonder how strong that feeling of revenge was then and how strong it is now.
I don't think this is the motivation of anyone. I think everyone understands that no one can live in the border next to ISIS terrorists. Everyone understands if you have a serial murder on your doorstep, you cannot live next to it literally because you won't be alive. He will come and kill you. So this is the reason why we're operating. We are doing one of the most complicated military operations in the world because many people compare it to Mosul when the coalition was fighting ISIS. The difference is that Mosul didn't have underground terror city that you need to dismantle, and it makes it almost like a double job than what Mosul was.
We'll get to that, but I just wonder, to what extent do you think revenge plays a role in this?
Zero, absolutely zero.
The Israeli, because people have spoken about it, haven't they? I mean, I don't.
It's not why we do it.
Including the Prime Minister.
It's not why we do it. I mean, the Prime Minister said that the main goal of the war is to give the people of the south area of Israel the safety and the security to live peacefully. This is why we need to fight Hamas, because Hamas apparently is a bad news both to Israelis, but both to the Palestinians.
So do you think that was him sort of speaking hastily? In the emotion of the moment?
The truth is, I don't remember when he said that. I've been listening to my Prime Minister since then. He just gave an ABC.
He said that on day one.
He just gave an ABC interview just lately. He never mentioned that. What he was saying is that part of the future of the region will be that Israel will have 100% control and security in order to make sure Gaza will never be again a terror city.
Now that phrase is very interesting as well then, isn't it? In terms of the war aims.
Yes.
100% control.
Of course.
Means what? Means there will never be a Palestinian state. There will never be a self-governing Gaza Strip again.
Look at the Gaza Strip. The 6th of October was the day before this barbaric attack. The Palestinians been controlling the Gaza Strip since 2005. So Israel gave the Palestinians full control of the Gaza Strip. And we ended up with having a terror monster, a military terrorism that has built underground terror city that used the international support for the Gaza people in order to build this underground terror city, to keep his people poor and miserable because they couldn't care less about the people of Gaza. All they care is about the destruction of Israel. And this is the result of 16 years of sovereign of Hamas in Gaza. So apparently it's bad for the region that in the south border of Israel, there will be a terror entity. And this is why I'm saying you are going to the place where I think all Israelis understand now, you cannot have peace when you have terror organizations running the place. So you cannot have peace with terror organizations. Is that clear enough? that are beheading your children.
Yes, but it's what the implication of that is then. So what that does mean that there will not be any question of any sort of self-governing Gaza Strip again.
There was a self-governing in Gaza. We saw the results. So apparently it's bad both to Israelis and to Palestinians.
But it's gone now. So
do you agree it's bad both to Israelis and to Palestinians?
I'm never going to give a personal opinion. Nothing I ever do here is about... You don't even
understand that Hamas is bad both to Israelis and Palestinians, and we have a serious problem here.
But you understand
this is a question of values.
In this conversation, nothing I say is about my personal view. I'm putting the other side to you.
Yeah, but I think it's quite obvious.
Yeah. No, it's not. But I mean... What I'm trying to ascertain from you is, you do seem to be saying, because of what has happened, because of the way they behaved, there's not going to be any question of the Palestinians running the Gaza Strip again.
No, I will say it clearly. There is no chance that our security will be kept hostage in the hands of terrorists. This is what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say, we have no interest running the water system in Gaza. We have no interest of running anything that is happening in Gaza. We have one interest, to keep our people safe. In order to do that, we need to make sure not going to be ever another terror city instead of Gaza City.
Can you envisage any scenario in which there is a Palestinian entity in Gaza which doesn't have people in it who want to fight Israel?
I'm praying and hoping for that, of course. Everyone wants to pray.
But do you believe it? Do you believe it's possible?
So I will tell you the truth. The truth is that if you look into the context of how it happened, the fact that after the genocide was committed in the south area of Israel, after this massacre was those horrible crimes that everyone saw, I hope, and everyone were exposed in social media about what exactly they did, how they killed and executed children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children, raped innocent women. The people of Gaza were celebrating that. So I think this is part of the problem.
Sorry, what do you mean?
We saw people in Gaza celebrating
the people of Gaza is quite a phrase.
This is part.
Do you mean everyone in Gaza, or do you mean some people?
We saw people in Gaza celebrating that. I think even the fact that one person, can celebrate atrocities, this is something horrific.
So that makes them your enemy, doesn't it?
No. I think, of course, Hamas is our enemy.
But the people, you say the people of Gaza were celebrating.
So I think
that reveals what you think of the people of Gaza.
When you check the support of Hamas was not there just because you took control. Hamas was elected.
They were elected. Yeah.
They were elected in democratic election, and they enjoyed the support of the people of Gaza. But the thing is, and I think this is where I'm thinking actually for a better future, both to the Gaza people and to Israelis, I think everyone could see how Hamas was preventing the people of Gaza to move to a safer place when Israel started basically defending its people after Hamas started a war. It was preventing them to go. He was using his people as human shields. So Hamas is bad to the Palestinians as well. We need to make sure the future of the region won't have any terror action, won't have any terror groups that want just to destroy Israel.
And again, this comes, our conversation over this month has been me asking you, do you think your war aims are really achievable?
Absolutely.
Because what you said from day one is you want to wipe out Hamas.
Absolutely, yes. We want to wipe out Hamas capabilities.
Given
Hamas's ideology cannot be wiped out. Capabilities can be wiped out. So I'm saying we want to wipe out Hamas capabilities so our children in the south area of Israel, in the center of Israel, in the north area of Israel will be safe.
This brings me back to this question of whether you think it is possible to have a Gaza Strip one day in which there are not fighters who want to attack Israel.
Absolutely.
Especially given what you're doing now. Because
we want to give this opportunity the base to start flourishing from. If Hamas is not there, if Hamas is there, nothing good can come out of this place.
Do you not think that what you're doing now, this military operation, creates future fighters?
No. What created future fighters is a system of education that is dehumanizing Jewish people, just like the Nazis did in the 30s, created the idea and the concept that the Jew is not a human being. The fact that they are comparing Jews to monkeys, you can see that when you look at the textbooks. And I think people are not aware of how, I think it was Hillary Clinton that said, they're poisoning the minds and the hearts of the children. And this is the problem. I think any future solution must deal with education. We cannot have Israeli children are raised since they're in kindergarten on the idea of peace. Peace is something we pray for every single day. And I think the fact that we were so peace lovers created 7th of October, because we couldn't believe that the enemy is capable of doing those type of things. We said, if only we will have a separation, we'll go back to the international border, Gaza will be a peaceful place. And look what happened. So, and I want to say another thing. The last month was giving the international community the opportunity to listen to Hamas spokesperson. He was here on every platform. People could see what this organization wants to do. So he said, we will do 7th of October again. And then he was asked about the occupation. He was saying, yes, the occupation is not Gaza. Gaza is not occupied. The occupation is the state of Israel.
Yes.
He was saying it clearly. So he wants to destroy the right of the Jews to have any single place in their homeland. This is something that the mind cannot accept.
That is true, but it's also true that, that Likud also believes that from the river to the sea, it should be Israel.
Last time I checked, and I know exactly what Likud stands for, Likud doesn't speak from the river to the sea. It's not a phrase that exists anywhere in the manifesto of any party in Israel. You need to understand the Likud was for peace for many years. It was Menachem Begin that achieved a peace agreement with Egypt. It was Netanyahu that achieved the Abraham Accords. Everyone in Israel wants peace. It's not a question of whether we want peace or not. We're dealing with type of ideology that is not interested not just in peace, is not interested that people in London, like they have Western values, will carry on with their values. So this is why they're standing in London and calling for jihad. Why are they calling for jihad in London? Do you have a British occupation?
Well, let me ask you about that thing as you brought it up. I mean, you said recently that you think Jews in London feel less safe.
It's true.
Than in Israel.
It's true. I'm afraid most of my friends in the Jewish community, and I think it was expressed with the chief rabbi as well.
Just explain that.
So, as you know, those marches, I think, make everyone think, what exactly are they saying? Having the context that this massacre was Hamas massacre on innocent Israelis. So you see people are standing in London after a massacre was committed with innocent people, innocent babies, and they are saying jihad. They're saying from London to Gaza Intifada. What do they want to do? So think about it. They express it in very clear words that for them, the jihad war is not something that is limited to Israel. They want to extend the jihad war. You had this ideology with Al-Qaeda that was hurting American symbol in 9/11. And you had in London Bridge, you had terrorists carrying out jihadi ideology in London. So you are familiar with this here. So you need to know better that when they're saying jihad, this has nothing to do to one political approach to another. This is a radical ideology that doesn't accept Western values. So it's against Israel, but it's against British people as well.
When you talk about it, I'm not quite clear what you're talking about.
The jihad calling in the streets of London. I think this is a clear call. People that understand this, what stands behind it, it's basically that people that don't believe in Islam, they don't have the right, to live as free people. So I think it's very dangerous.
So what about people who say, who are sort of the Free Palestine movement, people who want a Palestinian state? Do you accept that they are a legitimate view, legitimate protests? I would say that I'm also peaceful and not a threat to.
Well, I also want to have a better future with the Palestinians. I support a better future between Israelis and Palestinians. The question is,
but you don't support a Palestinian state, do you?
But I think that this idea, this concept, has failed long time ago.
A Palestinian state is just a failed idea.
As you know,
yes.
That we had at least 5 times in history that the Palestinians were offered to have a state. They always refused. And I tell you why they refused, because they said, unless you give us the right of return, we're not willing to sign any agreement with Israel. So the very basic idea of the Palestinianhood is to say we need to have our refugees back to the Green Line, which is where is modern Israel. Basically, they want to make sure Israel won't exist. This is why I'm thinking, again, that the issue is not between people that want a two-state solution and not want a two-state solution. This is between people that agree that Israel will exist and people that don't agree that any Jew will exist in this territory.
But the position you've now got yourself into seems to be that in order for Israel to exist, a Palestinian state can't exist. The two-state solution is dead as an idea, isn't it? In your mind.
No, it was dead because the Palestinians killed it. They killed it time after time.
Whoever killed it is dead.
Wait a second, but you need to understand.
You need to understand that now,
after the massacre, after Israel has experienced this type of brutality, we are now not in a place that we need to explain to the world why we're doing this war. We are in a place...
I'm not asking you about that.
No, but I'm trying to say that everyone needs to understand that when you have such a threat, the first thing you need to do is to make sure this threat doesn't exist. And this is why you're running... I'll give you an example, okay? When you were fighting the Nazi regime, and I want to compare it to that.
No, let's not go down that road yet.
You were first defeating the Germans, and then you had a Marshall Plan. So I'm saying first defeat this pure evil called Hamas, then work on a Marshall Plan for the region.
Right.
And I'm for a Marshall Plan for the region, for sure. We need a Marshall Plan for the Gaza Strip. We need a broader thinking. We need more countries to be involved. We need like the international coalition that was fighting ISIS. This is why you see American support, UK support, French support, German support. You see this international coalition that supports Israel because people understand this is a pure evil. We're fighting, just like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and if you go back to history, Nazi Germany.
So eventually you would return to the idea of a Palestinian state?
I don't know. I don't think...
With a Marshall... Well, how can you have a Marshall Plan for...
I don't think
for the Palestinians without there being a state?
I don't think that the idea of Hamas is dead also in the West Bank. You don't have election in the West Bank because they support Hamas as well. So if you're in a point where people support ideology that is calling for genocide, that committed those crimes on the 7th of October, you cannot start peace from level 10.
Well, then you're in perpetual war, aren't you?
No,
I mean, that is a hopeless position of perpetual fighting.
No, because my Marshall Plan, it includes education. And if you don't deal with education for peace, you will never have peace eventually. This is why I truly believe...
But you can't have Tel Aviv in charge of Palestinian education, can you?
No, take the Americans.
So you're not in control of that?
Americans did that in Japan after Second World War. They changed the whole educational system in Japan after the Americans...
But this is very revealing because, I mean, what you're effectively saying is that the idea of any kind of real self-governance for Palestinians now is effectively dead, and certainly a long, long, long way into the future.
Krishnan,
because you don't believe it's possible.
Krishnan, can I tell you something? I think you get the whole story wrong. 7th of October is threatening you here in London as much as it threatened my children. So if you don't get this story...
We'll come to the war in a minute.
No, but if you don't get this story in a way, you're putting it in the regular box of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is not Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
We'll get to the war. I want to get to the war, but what I wanted to begin with...
You're sticking to the wrong paradigm.
Well, what I wanted to begin with was what the war aims are, because that's been very, very unclear.
Oh, it's very clear,
because
very clear.
Well, define destroying Hamas.
No, I will make it clearer so people can understand. First, that Hamas won't have capabilities. At the moment, there is underground terror city, there are rockets, there are hospitals turned into military facilities. All these things shouldn't exist after the war is over. The second thing is that Israel can live peacefully with its southern border, which means no threat is coming from the southern border. It means no people that are carrying guns coming to our cities, no people that carrying RPG, as we saw at the 7th of October, no military capabilities. This is a simple thing that needs to be achieved in a complex, very complex war. So the mission is clear. Any of this shouldn't exist in the Gaza Strip after Israel finishes the war.
And in the real world, that is a hopelessly unrealistic aim, isn't it?
No, I mean, America managed to do that in Mosul, in Iraq. After 8 months, Mosul was clear from ISIS.
What do you expect them to do? Do you expect them to leave? Do you see a sort of a world in which Hamas fighters, leave the Gaza Strip and go somewhere else and go and live in exile? I mean, what's the process? Or do you intend to kill them all?
I think that the people of Gaza were given a shelter in the south area of Gaza. Israel doesn't attack the southern area of Gaza. This is a very distinct area. So we give the people that are not involved in a military war against Israel to have a safe place.
I'm going to let that go for now, but there are plenty of cases of people being killed in places that are supposed to be...
We are fighting in order to dismantle the terror tunnels. We are fighting in order to dismantle the rockets.
No, I know, but address my question.
This is what we're doing.
Address my question.
I answered.
So you're going to kill them all?
No, it's not what I said, Krishna. This is what you said.
Are you going to kill them all or not?
So I'm going to give you the answer, no, because this is not the target. The target is not...
So what happens to them?
I'm saying again, the target is, in our opinion, is to make sure no rocket will be left in the Gaza Strip.
But what happens to those Hamas fighters?
Oh, when they don't have weapons, I think they will be in a different position. It's up to them to decide whether they're going to leave or not. But from our point of view, as long as there is no weapons in Gaza...
Because you need to have a position that you're negotiating towards. So what is the actual goal?
We're not negotiating with Hamas. I think you get it wrong.
No, not to negotiate with Hamas, but you're going to be negotiating with the international community, with Washington, with Egypt, with the regional neighbours.
I don't think it will be a negotiation. It will be actually a future plan that the international community needs to think together about the future of the Gaza Strip. This is not Israel's problem.
So Israel will just do whatever it wants, regardless of what everybody else says. Is that what you mean?
Krishnan, do you have a problem listening to what I'm saying? Because I didn't say any of what you're repeating.
No, but you're not really addressing my question head on. I'm trying to get you to get,
I'll say it simple. The international community should address the Gaza problem. It's as much of it's Israel's problem, it's the international community's problem, and it is also the Egyptian problem. Yeah. Egypt has a border with Gaza, as you know. The Rafah cross goes to
So
Egypt.
What's the settlement? Tell me what the settlement is.
I think, again, no settlement will happen before the last rocket of Hamas being destroyed.
I understand that.
It takes time.
I understand your aim.
To begin with, the international community at the moment supports Israel's right for self-defense.
But then what?
And it should be for ongoing time. I think the Gaza Strip will be a much better place to begin with.
Yes, but then what? Once you have achieved your military aim, in your terms,
yes, then
what?
So I'm saying the international community will need to have a solution for every future aspect, just like the Marshall Plan has.
And this is your Marshall Plan.
So I'll give you the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan historically had two pillars. It had economic pillar, it had educational pillar, and it had limits on Germany and Japan in using power, right? Yeah. It has these three pillars. We'll have to need to use all the three pillars in order to create a better future.
And there was a German state.
It's not the same, obviously, because we are in a place where this small place of 40 kilometers called the Gaza Strip at the moment is not in a place of, even starting to speak about future political solution because they were under terror regime. So we need to make sure that the Gaza people, the Gaza Strip will be under future horizons that are not existing under Hamas.
I think most people listening to this conversation will conclude that there is no prospect of Israel even looking at self-determination for the Palestinian people now.
I think this is not my duty. My duty is to protect my people as the state of Israel. And at the moment, the facts on the ground are that the 7th of October was a watershed moment, that Israel understood it cannot protect its people because the terror organization is there.
Right, let's talk about the war and the way it's being prosecuted.
Yes.
1,400 people were killed on October the 7th.
And 241
maybe 7,000 people injured. And over 200 people kept hostage.
Yes, 241. We need to make it in accurate words.
We are now looking at over 10,000 Palestinians, as reported by the locals. And you can quibble over the figures, but certainly we're talking about thousands and thousands of civilians. I'm sure you'll accept that. And thousands of children. So how do you feel about that?
I will give you my answer. So first of all, every loss of life is a tragedy. There is no question.
Do you mean that? Or is that a political answer?
No. I totally mean that. I don't think that that anyone wanted the 7th of October attack. We didn't start that. They started that. But let me tell you another way to look on it. And I think this is where I think the numbers lie. 7 million Germans were killed in the Second World War and just 500,000 Brits. Who was the right side in historic perspective? Was it the Brits that lost just 500,000 people? I'm saying that, of course, cynically. Or was it the Germans that lost 7 million people? But this is what you're doing. What you're doing is cynically, you're taking the numbers and saying, what is wrong and right is whether you use the international law as part of your work. And this is what Israel is doing. Israel is targeting only military targets. If you would have seen the Gaza map, you would have seen lots of blocks of red spots that have launching areas, which means that these places has become military targets. And this is 100% legitimate, according to international
This is a fruitless argument, as you know, because what happens is you say you only target military targets, and you say the hospital was a military target because it was being used by Hamas. It may have been. We don't actually have the evidence for that.
I'm glad you're mentioning that.
It may have been, but that is your justification. And we will never really get to the truth of it, perhaps, because you've blown it to smithereens.
I want to use that. I want to use that to explain.
So what I mean is that what I want to get to, hang on, let me just answer the question, because the point of this circular argument around we only target military targets is fruitless. The facts of the matter is you're killing civilians.
The fact of the matter,
by the thousands.
The fact of the matter, Britain killed civilians deliberately in Dresden, Hamburg, and Berlin.
Yeah.
And that was part of defeating Nazi Germany. Israel is not doing that. Israel is actually being sensitive, sending people to the south area of Israel, of Gaza. Israel is giving them alerts. Israel is doing things that not even one army. We're not killing them. It's Hamas that's killing them. It's Hamas that's using them as human shield.
Well, you can. I know that's the other side of this argument. That you can say if it wasn't for Hamas's behaviour, none of this would be happening.
No, but Hamas is actually using them physically.
But
physically
the fact
by
is, right
turning
now,
civil facilities to military facilities.
Right now, Israeli bombs are blowing up Palestinian civilians.
After the Palestinians been given the opportunity to move to the south area of Gaza, opportunity was not given to the children of Sderot, Kfar Aza.
Many of them have been killed after they've moved as well, and we've seen evidence of that. So
I think the majority of them been prevented by Hamas. So
there are plenty of people being killed in circumstances which we'll never get to the truth of, is the truth, because we will never get independent investigators in while this is going on.
Krishnan, I'll tell you, I'll make it simple to you. This is a democratic country fighting according to the international law. We saw yesterday.
No, only in your own terms. You cannot say that as a statement.
I'll give you yesterday's visual. Visual, it was screened in every television in the world, so you cannot deny that. You could see Israeli tank giving a support and escort of security to Palestinians moving to the south. This is something that Hamas is not doing for them and Israel is doing for them.
But it doesn't mean that you're not...
Just explain to yourself whether it makes sense to you that you're defending the Gaza people when you're fighting a war against those troops of Hamas embedded into this civilian population. But Israel is doing beyond what the international law is asking.
But that also doesn't mean that you're not possibly breaking international law. Now, we can't settle whether you're breaking international law now. There are people who say you are, there are people who say you're not.
I'll make it simple to you. In a war, people get killed. The most important thing is to remember whether you're targeting civilians or not. We're not targeting civilians. We are fighting in a place that when the Americans were fighting Mosul, the casualties was much higher in numbers and also in proportion. And you need to remember again that Israel is doing everything to give this population the opportunity to have a safe shelter in 500 different places in the south area of Gaza where they have international shelters.
But it is no comfort, is it, to the mother whose baby has been blown up by an Israeli bomb.
My heart goes to any mother that needs to help her.
It was a military
son.
Target where the baby was.
But I want the people of Gaza to remember the baby's been butchered in Israel.
Yeah.
We need to make this fight because Hamas at the moment is keeping the people of Israel under a danger that we cannot afford. And you know what? I don't think the UK would have done different if it was 30 British children getting killed, if it was terrorists walking into your cities and walking into Manchester and London.
That may be true. Again, it's something we can't settle. But
that's the thing.
You invited me and many other journalists to a viewing of Hamas video, body-worn cameras, and things that were filmed by those killers when they went into Israeli homes. And you've watched it. I haven't watched it. You've watched it. Are you prepared to watch the same kind of video coming out of Gaza?
Absolutely.
Of what Israeli bombs are doing to Palestinian civilians?
First of all, I don't need to have a special, screening for that because I can open the BBC Sky and Channel 4 every single day.
Well, you can't. Do you know why? Because you won't let us in.
From Gaza. It's not we are preventing it. It's Hamas that's preventing
it. You're preventing journalists from going into Gaza.
Hamas preventing also humanitarian aid. Everything you see that is problematic today.
But right now,
it's Hamas.
Israel is not allowing journalists to go into Gaza without
Hamas
Israeli military censorship.
It's Hamas that is not giving people in. And I want to tell you something.
Well, can we go? From an Israeli point of view, you're the ambassador. Can we go?
You can go to the south area of Israel.
Can we go to Gaza?
I need to check just with the IDF about all the arrangements because Hamas and Egypt are controlling the borders at the moment, as you know. But I need to check it for you.
But you are controlling the border into Gaza.
I need to check it for you. But the most important thing to remember is the visuals from Gaza are coming out. It's not like no one sees what happens in Gaza. The world watching what happens in Gaza.
Not by independent people.
And the world should watch what happened at the 7th of October.
Yeah.
Because some people deny it.
But what I'm saying is...
We don't deny what's happening in Gaza. We're saying it's a war.
But you're not allowing us to go and film it for ourselves and see it for ourselves and find out what's going on.
I don't think, again, the issue is whether we know or not know. The world knows what's happening.
No, it's
not. The world knows.
Because you're prepared to you're prepared to show the images that you have.
There is a dramatic difference on a moral level. If you're targeting kids, you're coming and shooting them in their head. This is what Hamas people did, and you can see that when you screen that. Or you are targeting a military facility.
But you are knowingly killing.
No, you know what, just 3 days, the last 3 days, the IDF was stopping attacks just because we could see children around. Stopping attacks, this is what IDF is doing. We're not fighting if we see children around. So this is something we actually do whenever we have the ability to see children around. And look where Hamas is located.
You are deliberate. There's a report right now as we're speaking of another explosion in Jabalia. There have been explosions in all sorts of populated areas, which you may say are military targets, but when you hit that military target in your terms, there are also civilians who you're going to kill. So you are knowingly killing civilians.
No, we're not, because we are giving them the opportunity, enough time for them.
And if they don't go, you drop the bomb anyway and you knowingly kill them.
Did you see how many thousands and thousands of Gaza people are actually leaving because Israel is sending them alerts? So it works. Yes. The alerts work.
But not everyone has gone. Not everyone has been able to go.
So blame Hamas if they're not going.
That may also be true. It may also be true that people aren't allowed to go. We can't test that, as I say, because we're not there. We're not allowed there by Israel. But I accept that may be true. But the point is, you are knowingly killing civilians. That is what is causing so much upset around the world. The world accepts that Israel needs to defend itself, but it's the way it's defending itself and the way it is knowingly hitting civilians.
Let me share with people.
Under the guise of hitting civilians of military targets.
The Americans sent their best men that were fighting in Iraq to give us the best advice on how to minimize casualties. After getting the best advice, both from Americans and from the British senior people that are, familiar with this type of fighting, they can say for sure you cannot avoid casualties in a war.
Well, then you're doing a very bad job. That's the point, isn't it? If you've taken the world's best advice and you're still killing 10,000 civilians.
Did the Americans do something else?
And perhaps 4,000 children.
Did you do something else?
You're doing it really badly.
Oh, so you think basically all the people that, all the civilian casualties that British troops and American troops killed in Iraq, it was the wrong thing to do in order to fight the terror organization.
I'm not
Is
talking
this what
about
you're
that.
saying?
I'm not talking about that.
But this is the same.
No.
This is the same. This is the same.
No,
and I can tell you that in terms of casualties, Mosul was much worse.
It is no defense to say, we've taken the best advice and this is what happens. The fact is, you're killing a load of people. So
the international law doesn't check how many people got killed. The international check only one thing. If you can show that it was a military target, and Gaza is full of military targets. Just yesterday, we exposed in a theme park a launching area of rockets. So this is a military target for sure. And it's based in amusement park. So this is how cruel Hamas is, that it keeps on locating everything to do to its military bases into the most vulnerable places, like theme parks, like hospitals. Another thing, think about Shifa Hospital, just to show you how much we try to minimize casualties. We could have, fight Shifa Hospital from day one, because this is the headquarters. Everyone knows where it is. We have the location. We shared intelligence with all our friends, so they know Shifa Hospital is the headquarters of Hamas. Why we didn't attack Shifa Hospital so far? One reason. We care about the people inside, and we're trying to find international solutions, including with all our friends, including friends in the Arab world, how to evacuate the patients so they can have alternative hospital, so they can get a proper treatment, and we can make sure that the Shifa Hospital will be what it is, a military facility based as headquarters of Hamas. But look how much Israel is doing more than the normal army would have done in order to save human life.
Well, let me ask you about the pressure that you're coming under from the international community. So America wants you to have some sort of humanitarian pause. Many of the regional partners want that. Is that a possibility?
So we are willing to give, as you know, as much humanitarian aid as needed when it comes to water, food, and medicine, which we think is important and essential. But we definitely think that in order to do that, it's enough to have those pauses that bring trucks of equipment to the Gaza Strip. We don't need ceasefire that will play only to the hands of Hamas. And we need to make sure that as we carry on fighting and we make sure the enemy will be defeated, we won't stop till the mission is accomplished.
So just to understand what that means, you're talking about a few hours in which humanitarian convoys can go in. You're not talking about
humanitarian aid keeps on coming.
You're not talking about a 3-day humanitarian pause, for example, which would be a ceasefire. That's what people are talking about today.
It's not going to be helpful. And I think the Prime Minister said it yesterday clearly, that in order to have humanitarian break or something that is more than a few hours, you need to have all our hostages back. And I was
all of the hostages, because the other offer, as you know, that is being floated is a number of hostages in return for a ceasefire.
We're not going to let Hamas do this psychological terror warfare.
You don't think a peace can be built on a pause that becomes a ceasefire that becomes a peace? You don't believe in that?
No peace. 6th of October was a ceasefire. Just to remind you, 6th of October was a ceasefire. Israelis were sitting in their homes preparing to a holiday when Hamas murderers, the baby murderers, came to our homes and deliberately killed innocent people. So this was the result of a ceasefire. So it means that the enemy has capabilities that he's intending to use because his ideology is jihad. So if this is the framework that Hamas works in, so he needs to have zero capabilities in order to hurt our people. This is, I think, something that every life-wanting and needing country would have done in order to protect the people. I think you don't understand.
So it doesn't matter.
I think you don't understand how traumatized the Israelis are. I think you don't understand how the 7th of October is changing the mindset of every single individual in Israel. The people that lived in the south border of Israel were the most peace-lovers people, the people that they wanted the Gaza people to work in their homes, the same people that were giving the information to Hamas leaders to kill them individually and counting each individual family, if they have enough people, that they killed, according to the data they gave them from working in their homes.
No, that's why I began with that question of sort of how, what is the impact on the national psyche?
This is a loss of trust. This is a loss of trust. You cannot trust your enemy when all it's doing is calling for jihad and building a military that is against you. You cannot trust your enemy.
So what that means is that while the outside world is thinking, well, it's been going on for a month now, we've got to try and get to a place where there's a ceasefire and we try and make some progress, you're saying you are actually more resolved than ever that this will be a military solution.
First of all, progress won't be achieved until Hamas. If I don't get to hear from anyone around the world that he wants to do the job instead of Israel. If someone would have volunteered to dismantle Hamas capabilities instead of Israel, believe me, by all means, we would have given them the opportunity. It's not an easy job. We're risking the lives of our people. So this is not an easy job, but we're doing it because this is the only way to protect the future Israel. But you need to understand, no one volunteering to do this hard job. The Americans did it in Mosul. They understand how hard it is. You did it in Mosul.
How much accountability do you think there is going to be for the fact that Israeli intelligence, Israeli military didn't see this coming and were unable to stop that military capability of Hamas building up over that period of time? Right. The tunnels are no surprise. The tunnels have been there forever. I've been there.
No, it's true. The tunnels has been there, and I think there will be investigation after the war.
It's a terrible breakdown, isn't it?
Well, it is, absolutely. Yes, it's a terrible
Doesn't
moment.
Benjamin Netanyahu hold the responsibility for that?
He told that to
Minister.
ABC. He told that to ABC News. He said, I'm the Prime Minister, I hold the responsibility.
Shouldn't he go?
It's the decision of the people of Israel. This is not his decision to make. I think the people of Israel, we are a democratic country, as you know. There is an election. We had the Yom Kippur War, and people of Israel decided what will happen after.
Do you think there has been a bigger failure since the establishment of the State of Israel?
I think this is the biggest trauma since the establishment of the State of Israel. I do think that
it's inconceivable that the man who was in charge.
No, to begin with, I think the Yom Kippur War was a bigger failure. I think this is a bigger trauma. It's different because it was hurting civilians. The Yom Kippur War was a combined military attack that could have made Israel not exist. This is why it's a bigger failure. I think this is not a thing that could have made Israel not to exist, but the people in Israel are so traumatized that I think it makes it a very, very big, historic moment. And as I said, is a watershed moment in our security and analyzing how we handle our problems.
And for you personally, it seems to have sort of strengthened your feelings about political solutions. You know, you're an ambassador right now, but you have been a politician and a minister in Israel, and you were known as a as a pretty hard-line right-wing figure, if that's not an unfair way to describe it.
I'm almost crying because I think in Israel, no right and left at the moment. People are saying that when we are dealing with this type of brutality, it has nothing to do where you are on the political spectrum. This has nothing to do to political views. This is something to do to humanity versus barbarism.
But you traditionally, for example,
it doesn't matter. Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
My political views doesn't matter after the 7th of October. You know why? Because everyone in Israel is going to shift their political views after the 7th of October. This is irrelevant. Everything that was built up till this moment will be shifted and changed. I'm telling you, I'm promising you, the Israeli system, the political, the military, the defense point of view, everything will have to adjust to a new reality after the 7th of October war.
And if you look at what you said before, that makes us think. I mean, you've referred as a politician in 2017 to Palestinians as thieves of history, saying their history books are empty. It resonates with what you're saying about education.
I think education now is a serious issue.
And the worry is, what people suspect is that betrays a sort of racism about Palestinians.
No, there is racism against Jews. There was a genocide intention against Jews.
Definitely.
Yes, so I think let's put that into context. Jews today in London feel terrified from the idea that the same thing will happen in London. So you cannot ignore the fact the victims here are the Jews.
Well,
don't victimhood the people that are not
the victims. Are also the 10,000 Palestinians dead.
They are victims of their own leadership.
Well, they're also victims of Israeli bombs.
No, they're the victims of this barbaric attack on the 7th of October that had to make Israelis...
You can frame it like that. I accept it's possible to frame it like that, but they are, in fact, victims of Israeli killing.
No, they're the victims of Hamas by any means. They're the victims of Hamas by committing those war crimes on Israelis on the 7th of October, but also by using and abusing humanitarian
But do you accept there is also
anti-Palestinian
racism, anti-Arab racism?
No. Israelis are a peace-loving nation. And the people... let me tell you one story, okay? One family in Be'eri was dreaming about how to... I heard this story and I was literally crying. He said that the dream of the person being butchered by a horrible Hamas terrorist was to build a coexistence village with buildings that will have shared Gaza people and Jewish people. I don't think there is one person in Gaza that his dream is to live next to any person in Israel in coexistence village. I don't think there is even one. And I think that this is the difference.
Why do you think that?
Oh, because when you're asking the Palestinians in every poll whether they want to have...
I mean, you're damning them all by saying that. You're saying they're all the same.
I'm afraid those initiatives, all I'm saying is no one wants coexistence. And I think this is the problem. If you had people that wanted coexistence, they would have had a political power and they would have fight Hamas. But there was no political power to fight Hamas. There was no opposition. There was no alternative thinking in the Gaza Strip. This is the tragedy, I think.
In any conflict resolution, you're going to need an element of each side trying to understand the other's position. To what extent do you understand the pain of a people who lost their land by the creation of Israel?
I think that if you remember the historic moment where it happened, it was the moment where they refused to have a state next to the Jewish state. That's the reason why the independence war started, because after the UN decision, they decided they don't want to have an Arab state next to a Jewish state. They just
That's the argument.
No, but
I understand that.
But
I'm asking you, do you have any empathy with the Palestinian position?
I have zero empathy to people that time after time refuse to recognize the right of the Jewish state to their homeland, Jewish people in their homeland. I have zero sympathy because I want to live in a world where we can live together.
How can you live together?
But they deny my right to exist.
If you have zero empathy, in your own words, with those people?
No, it's not what I said. I said I have zero sympathy to the fact that they lost their land. They didn't lose their land. They committed the crime of attacking the small state of Israel after the UN decision.
So do you have any empathy with the Palestinian people?
Absolutely. I think that...
What is your empathy?
I think my empathy to the Palestinian people, that we could have had a flourishing region, having the best high-tech, the best life.
No, that's an argument.
No,
I'm asking you share their pain for a moment.
So I'll just give you an example, okay? The best flourishing economic areas are in Judea and Samaria, where you have factories that have Palestinians and Israelis working together. That could have been the vision everywhere. But when you refuse to recognize the right of a Jew to exist, this is where it fails. So I think this ideology that doesn't want Jews to exist, this is a tragedy. I don't think
that's not empathy.
No, what I'm trying to say, that empathy comes when you have the understanding that I have the right to exist. Unfortunately, there were people in Hamas that they showed that clearly, that they didn't believe that any of the Jewish people in the state of Israel need to exist.
So there is no, the truth is there is no empathy between you and the Palestinian people.
I have empathy for the tragedy of the leadership, yes. I have empathy that they're under the tragedy of their leadership.
This is a very hopeless conversation then, isn't it?
No, it's not, because I think what's really hopeless is to build imaginary solutions. What's really hopeless is to think that a terror organization is something that will never hurt you. I think that the imaginary and the illusionary discourse that many people have need to be stopped. You cannot build peace on lies and illusions.
You will have seen Barack Obama's comments the other day that went viral on social media.
Which one?
That it's possible, he was on Pod Save America, and he was saying it's possible for more than one thing to be true at the same time, for it to be terrible, what happened on October the 7th, and for it to also be unbearable, what has happened in Gaza to the Palestinian people.
I'm saying again,
is he right?
The reason is that the two sides of the coin are coming from the same problem.
But is he right to say that those two it's possible to hold two thoughts in your head?
But
that it is terrible for those Israeli victims, and it is also terrible for those Palestinian people.
The mistake is that, in a way, it's not two thoughts, it's the same thought. It's Hamas that created this misery in the Palestinian people. And it's Hamas that created the misery at the 7th of October. So it's actually the same cause that's creating all this misery in the region. And of course, you can say that about other terror organizations.
And do you honestly think there is no responsibility at all on the behalf of the Israeli state and successive Israeli government?
Was there responsibility?
When you only say it's Hamas's responsibility, are you really saying it's nothing to do with anything we did?
When a democracy is fighting tyranny, when you were fighting Nazi Germany and you are very proud of it, and you're wearing the poppy now, and I'm wearing this because you're very proud of the soldiers that were willing to sacrifice in order this country to have freedom and liberty. So I'm going back to the same thing. The fact that you were fighting is because you believed Hitler and Nazi Germany are risk to all civilization, all human beings, all freedoms. This is where you were fighting. And you killed many people on the way. And this is why you need to understand, if your war is justified,
but you always
people
deflect.
get killed in the war.
You always avoid what I'm saying, which is that I'm not talking about that moment. Of course, that moment is terrible, and we agree on that.
But this moment created the war.
Everybody agrees on that.
This moment created the war. You cannot tell the story
I'm
from the middle.
talking to you about the horrific, unbearable situation that Barack Obama talked about the other day, which is the way people in Gaza have been living.
Can I offer something that will solve? I have an offer. I have a great offer to Barack Obama.
Do you accept that that is also to do with Israeli government as well as Hamas?
I have a great offer to Barack Obama. Bring our hostages back, all the 241, and make sure that Hamas leadership will say they're surrounding, and all Gaza Strip will be demilitarized by the international community. Believe me, not even one single individual will be killed in the Gaza Strip. If that happens now, I'm calling to everyone that has a power to impact Hamas. Not even one individual would have got killed in Gaza. The reason it's still going on is because Hamas keeps on firing on our cities. So it still has the capabilities to kill innocent people in Israel.
Give me a timeline for when you think this is going to be.
I think it's going to take more than a few weeks. So it's going to be long few weeks, at least.
So you think, but we're talking weeks rather than months or years.
I don't know.
You think within weeks Hamas can be destroyed?
The truth is, I don't know. And the thing is that if you ask the military people, they are saying, on the D-Day, you didn't know how long it's going to take to defeat Nazi Germany. So I think it's not on the same scale for sure. But we're just in the middle of a process when you still have so much infrastructure in the Gaza Strip to be dismantled. So it's going to take time. And I think the most important thing is here in this country, we have the UK government support. And Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, was saying very clearly that he doesn't support a ceasefire because he understood that Israel must accomplish the mission. And I think this is what people need to understand. If Israel won't accomplish the mission, it will have a very, very severe consequences, not just on the Middle East, not just on Israel, but also in Europe. Israel must defeat terrorism because terrorism is live here and we need to fight it together. And this is why I believe this is our fight. This is not just Israel's fight.
I would just want to ask you two brief things before we go. What you've done is tell people to move to safety. There is a phrase that is often used about that. It's called ethnic cleansing. Is what you're doing in Gaza ethnic cleansing?
I mean, do you know what ethnic cleansing even is?
Yes, because I've covered ethnic cleansing around the world.
Ethnic cleansing is what the people of Hamas did in Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Sderot, Ofakim. They moved from one house to another and brutally killed the people. This is ethnic cleansing. When you're saying to people, be in a safe place because this is a combat area. This is what happened in Ukraine.
So they can go back?
Of course.
Just to be clear, they can go back?
Of course. And can I ask you something? Was Ukraine ethnic cleansing by the fact people were fleeing out of Ukraine and people were building like tents to the refugees? Was it ethnic cleansing? Come on, this is war. This is war. In Ukraine, it was the same. Every time there is a war area, ethnic cleansing, when you literally look at 7th of October, look what Hamas was trying to do in Israel. This was ethnic cleansing. And Israel, what it's doing is giving a safe shelter to the people of Gaza so they will be safe. This is a war. You cannot have 100% safety. We understand that. And we don't want to see losing of innocent people life. But you need to understand this is what happened in Ukraine. So it has nothing to do to the word you mentioned. And what Hamas does definitely has something to do to this type of thinking.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you. Hoping for more peaceful days.